So that's a good start. I was muted, so I'm going to tell you good morning again, dear participants. My name is Eric Gall. I'm Deputy Director at IFOAM Organics Europe, and I will have the pleasure of moderating this LIVESEED workshop this morning. So yesterday we already had a presentation of the wealth of the various results of the LIVESEED project so far. At the scientific, at the technical level, we already started into looking into policy aspects, and we'll go into more details today at this workshop on the implementation of organic regulation related to seeds, and we will look at the progress achieved at the national level so far. So first of all, I'm going to present you again the LIVESEED project for this session. I'm sure that some of you have already seen these few introducing slides. As you know, there are many partners within the LIVESEED project, which is a 4 years long research project funded by Horizon 2020, the research program from the European Commission. It is coordinated by IFOAM Organics Europe together with FIBEL Switzerland. And as I said in the workshop today, we look at the implementation in details at the implementation of the organic regulation related to seeds. LIVESEED is a multi-actor consortium with 49 partners and linked parties across many European countries. The objectives of LIVESEED are to boost the organic seed availability and production, but also to foster the development of plant breeding across Europe, with the aim of reaching 100% use of organic seeds in the future. You're probably familiar with the main objectives of the LIVESEED project by now. The project has looked into the policy and regulation aspects so as to provide a level playing field for the use of organic seeds and variety registration across Europe. There were research and development aspects to develop innovative approaches in organic plant breeding and to improve the quality of organic seeds. It also looked at the socio-economics aspects to increase the accessibility of organic seeds and the adoption of new cultivars, at the economic and market aspects so as to improve the competitiveness of the organic seed supply chain, and also at communications aspects to enhance knowledge exchange and to raise awareness on the benefits of using organic plant breeding and organic seeds as well. So LIVESEED seeks to foster harmonized implementation of the EU organic regulation on organic seeds, and we look at this in details this morning, which includes strengthening the organic seed databases across the whole European Union. It aims at widening the choice of organic cultivars to meet the demand of farmers, processors, retailers, and consumers. It also looked at the socio-economic aspects related to the production and use of organic seeds, and it seeks to improve availability and quality of organic seeds as well. What we will do this morning, what we will discuss, is the progress that has been made since the start of the project 4 years ago. And so we will, in the first session, we will have speakers who will present you with key success factors that have been identified to increase the production and use of organic seeds. This workshop brings together stakeholders from the national and regional workshops that were organized throughout the project in various countries. Hopefully we'll get inspired by the successful practices that have led to positive outcomes so far. We will discuss the launch of a European-wide router database for the registration and information about organic seeds available. And we will, of course, discuss the key next steps that have to be taken to increase the production and use of organic seeds. So in this first session, as I said, we will look in details at the key success factors in the implementation of national policy recommendations that have been identified by the project so far. Then we will have a short break of 15 minutes. Then we'll have discussions on smart practices, looking at case studies about the seed expert groups that exist in many countries, at organic field trials and at national seed databases as well. and we will also discuss the communications aspects. We will have a lunch break, and after the lunch break, we'll have a presentation on the launch of a European router database. We will have a short movie about the LIVESEED project and about the best strategies to produce organic vegetable seeds. And finally, we will have the discussion, the panel debate from 3:15 to 4:45 with many very interesting speakers as well. I would like to remind you, like my colleague Molly did, that you will have the opportunity to ask questions today. In this first session, we'll have a question and answer session after our two presentations, and you will have to write your questions in the chat, and I will have colleagues moderating the questions. So the questions selected will be transmitted to me, and I will read them and ask them to the speakers. So let's go into the session about the key factors in implementing national policy recommendations. We will first have a presentation by my colleague at IFOAM Organics Europe, Martin Sommer, about the evaluation of a national progress made in different countries since the start of the LIVESEED project. Then we will have a presentation by Michael Reichmakers from Bionext about the key policy measures to increase production and use of organic seeds in northwestern Europe, and then we will have a questions and answers session. I think we can go directly into the presentations now. So I will call my colleague Martin Sommer to give us the first presentation about the national progress achieved so far. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you for being with us again for another LIVESEED workshop. Martin works as policy coordinator at IFOAM Organics Europe and is coordinating the policy work package of LIVESEED to boost production and use of organic seeds in Europe. I think we are ready for your presentation, Martin.
Yes, thank you, Eric. We're a bit ahead of the time, but that only gives us a bit more time for questions maybe at the end. And please keep in mind that you can ask the questions during all of the session. You don't have to wait until the end. And that is also easier for you to ask the question like this, I think. So I have the pleasure now to present to you the progress that has been achieved at national level since the start of the LIVESEED project. And I will, of course, not go into all of the progress, but I will focus on the progress in those countries that at the beginning of the LIVESEED project we selected as countries in which we think there's a great potential for improvement in production and use of organic seeds. And those concerns the countries that you can see here in blue. It's the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, then Bulgaria and Greece. We had the pleasure to attend the national workshops myself. And furthermore, there have been workshops in Hungary, Italy, Poland, Romania, and also Spain. This progress that I'm going to present to you now is part of a LIVESEED task, which is the National Progress Report, and there will be an actual report published at some point on the LIVESEED website, I think, as well, where we reflect on the actions taken by the stakeholders since the national visits and the national and regional workshops. And it will consist of the actions that have been formulated and committed during the national workshops in the form of the declaration of organic seed. So that means during the workshop and at the end of the workshop, the participants and stakeholders committed to actions in their country to boost the production and use of organic seed. And we will now show, what has come out of this commitments. And also more broadly, we analyzed the developments in the implementation of the organic regulation compared to previous years of the LIVESEED project. This progress has been, and information about the developments have been collected by the national partners. They have been in touch with all the stakeholders. They have been updating each other what has happened since. And IFORM Organics Europe, as the coordinator of the policy work package, has brought all of this input together. And I have the pleasure now today to present it to you along those categories that you can read here. So we will go through the progress based on those sections to structure it a bit. And I would like to start with the database. So I'm talking about the national seed database. That is not only a marketplace where seed producers can list their offers and farmers can see what is available on the market, but it also serves, as you might know, as a basis for the decision of whether a derogation to use non-organic seed is granted or not. And there we have seen a lot of positive developments. We've seen that there's increased awareness about the database at national level. Of course, you would assume everyone should know about it by now, but there's still some gaps to be filled. And we've seen quite generally that additional seed producers have been listing themselves in this database after the national workshops have taken place. Also, a general trend could be identified that new seed offers were introduced to the database, even though, of course, there's been quite a lot of national differences. So in some countries, this increase is more or less substantial. So there is still room for improvement there. That's for sure. Then we have seen almost in every countries that after these national workshops, stakeholders have sat together to draft a letter to the national competent authorities to provide inputs on points of how the database can be improved. And this stakeholder input proved very essential and crucial. And many national authorities have been, recognizing this input and also recognizing the importance of the database. And because they took it seriously, many databases have been improved. So the functionality has been improved, so the usability has been improved, and also the update frequency has been improved. Still, there are some points where, like some single cases in which the database is actually still an Excel file, and that means, some small steps are important, but in some cases we will need more substantial changes in the future, and also when the new organic regulation will come into place. Then we had over to derogation. So how is it managed that derogations for non-organic seed are provided and managed? And we see that that expert groups have started working on non-derogation lists. So meaning the expertise of the expert group is used to draft a list of varieties for which a derogation cannot be granted because there's already sufficient organic seed available in quantity and also in quality. So this is a good tool to limit derogations and to increase the sale of organic seed and the use of organic seed. We've seen that in many countries after the national workshops, derogation reports were made public. Usually they should be made public anyways, I think, for transparency. But where it was not public yet, due to the request of the national stakeholders, those reports were made public, which is a very good development. And also, lastly, lists of equivalent varieties have been developed. So that means a list of farmers or a list for farmers, which farmers can consult to see when they want a certain variety but it's not available. They can see on these lists what are the equivalent varieties they can use as well. And maybe those equivalent varieties are available in organic seed, and then it's then that's a positive thing. And yeah, this is expected really to decrease the amount of granted derogations in the end. Then we come to expert groups. Expert group is something that we've been highlighting continuously as in LIVESEED as a recommendation, really, to implement at national level, to bring together competent authorities, farmers, certification bodies, seed producers, and researchers. And therefore, it was very nice to see that several national expert groups have been nominated and are in the process of becoming official after the national workshops and in the recent years. We see at the example of Poland, for example, there is some flexibility in how you set up such a expert group. And we see, for example, there in Poland, this expert group have been set up within an already existing council for organic farming. So there's multiple ways of how to do it, but the important thing is that it's done. Research is, of course, crucial on the one hand to develop new varieties that are adapted to the organic farming conditions and that are adapted to the upcoming demand and also challenges like climate change, for example. And on the other hand, research is really important to test varieties also under organic conditions, because this is not a practice that is established everywhere. Often organic varieties are tested under conventional conditions, but it's important that it's taking place under the actual circumstances. So there we've seen that public research projects and breeding programs for organic varieties are either continued or started. There's funds being available or made available for organic breeding, and also cultivar testing trials under organic conditions are being expanded. In general, we can see that there's a big focus on cereals, but also there's testing trials taking place for vegetable varieties and also potatoes in one or two cases. And what is also very good is that you might know there's going to be a temporary experiment on organic variety testing. Probably the EU Commission will go into a bit in detail about that in the panel session. But we've seen that there's a great interest and countries and national authorities and have been showing interest to the Commission that they want to participate in this experiment, which is very good, and which also probably happened due to the national workshops that have taken place and that have really shifted the attention towards this. Another point which is often underestimated is training and communication on the topic of organic seed. And therefore, I've been glad to see that there's a lot of information exchange that has been, kickstarted after the national workshops. For example, in Bulgaria, we have seen a brochure with information about organic vegetable seed. This has been created. What we have seen a lot is workshops on organic seed, for example, at trade fairs. This was when trade fairs were still a thing in a physical world. Hopefully there will soon be again, but we've also seen that there have been webinars done, as an alternative to a physical workshop. Also, it can be a useful tool to establish a social media platform. We've seen it, for example, in Romania, that such a platform has been set up to facilitate the exchange between organic seed producers and farmers. So this is something useful that if a network is not yet existing, you can help that to become a thing by setting up such a platform. Then another crucial point is that organic seed are included in the often already existing training programs. for current and upcoming organic farmers. So to showcase why it is important to use organic seed and what are the special things that farmers have to take into account when they use also organic seed. And then we've also seen a couple of demonstration fields to showcase the performance of the varieties for farmers, so that they can also make themselves an own picture and see how those varieties perform under organic conditions, which should not be underestimated. Another thing is that certification bodies and those who do not do it yet have started to actually actively inform organic farmers during certification field visits, first about the existence of the database and a recommendation to really make use of it, but also of the benefits of using organic seed. And lastly, we've seen that stakeholder networks have been established on the one hand on research, to exchange research outcomes on organic varieties among breeders and research institutes, but also we've seen networks being set up among breeders and end users, so farmers in the end. And we all know that that farmers can play a very important role in breeding as well, to make sure that the varieties are actually living up to the expectations that farmers have towards them. And lastly, if we've looked at actions that have been taken to stimulate production and use of organic seed, we've seen internal task force organic seed production set up. In example of Greece, which is very nice. I don't have time to explain now, but yes, I'm recommending you to have a look at the national posters. Then we've seen the ministries have been lobbied to include extra payments for farmers that use organic seed. This can be done in the context of CAP and also the national action plans. And yes, we have, based on these, we have come up with a key success factors and recommendations based on all of these inputs. So national authorities and stakeholders have the task to install and expand national seed expert groups. Those expert groups can be then used to decide on derogation status, for example. Research institutes, breeders, and seed companies have the responsibility and can make a difference by conducting more testing trials on organic conditions. Stakeholder networks are also crucial in this. National authorities and seed companies can set up targets to gradually increase the supply of organic seed for key crops. Seed producers and farmers can give recommendations towards ministries on how to improve the database. National authorities and certifiers can communicate towards farmers and seed producers on this database. Then, of course, it's to the national authorities to actually improve the quality and functionality of the database, and maybe even consider connecting it to the EU root database. And the national organic associations, they can really make a difference by organizing workshops and webinars on organic seed for current but also upcoming organic farmers. I've come to an end now. You can read back all of this progress that has been made at national level in detail in the national progress posters. You can find them in the Discuss with LiveSeed section, and if you click on one of those countries, then you will see the actual results, and you can actually get in touch also with our national partners on this if you want to know more. So I will keep it like this. I think I'm already a bit over time. I hope it's no problem, but I think we made some time available at the beginning by starting a bit earlier.
Thank you very much, Martin. You're not at all over time. We are actually a bit ahead of time. Thank you. It's great to see that so much was achieved thanks to the LIVESEED project, also at the policy level. In particular, it's good to hear that databases at the national level were already improved concretely, and that new expert groups were set up in other countries as well, because we'll have the opportunity to discuss it a lot today, but that's indeed one of the key success factors, the establishment of national expert groups working in particular on no derogation list. So thank you for the presentation of these results so far. We will keep questions for both you and Mike after the two presentations. So I think we can go directly into Micah's presentation. Good morning, Micah.
Good morning.
Good to see you again for another LIVESEED workshop. Micah, let me introduce you. You are a project leader on organic seeds and breeding with Bionext since 2005. Since 2010, Micah is also responsible for the Dutch National Annex projects, which include the organization of annual meetings of expert group and advice on derogation policy to the Dutch government. Within the work package of LIVESEED dedicated to policy work, you have co-organized the national visits as well as the national workshops, and also the international workshop dedicated to Northwestern European countries. And this is what you will tell us about this morning in details. What are the results of the discussions we've had among this group of countries, which are part of the ones with the most elaborated systems to increase the use of organic seeds. So, Micah, thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eric. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all again, although it's online. I will just hopefully you now see my presentation. Yes. I will tell you a bit more about policy measures that and key success factors in that in Northwestern Europe. I will start with the implementation of the regulation. Then I will say something more about smart practices, and I will end with the recommendations that were the outcome of the workshops that we organized earlier this year. When I talk about Northwestern Europe, I mean the countries that are colored orange in this picture. In total, 13 countries. The sources of information of the things I'm going to present are the status quo analysis that we conducted at the beginning of the LIVESEED project, the LIVESEED database analysis that has been done by our partners, so Feeble and the Italians. There have been email consultations and surveys, and we organized two workshops, one international workshop for Northwestern Europe countries, and we had a separate workshop in September on vegetative propagating material. Start with the databases. As you can see here, it's an overview of all the databases in different countries. Most of the Northwestern European countries maintain an interactive organic seed database. And 8 countries out of 13 work already with the organic ICSeed system. And this system has some advantages because seed suppliers can upload the offer directly themselves. You can apply for derogations through the database, and it can show for control bodies a history of the availability on a certain date. If we look at the derogation process, there are already several countries working with a national annex system or a non-derogation list. All countries have a category 2 for single derogation. So this is a list of all the crops and varieties for which there is offer, but not enough to cover the whole market. And most countries also work with a general derogation list, also called a category 3, for crops for which there's no offer at all. Looking at the main policy measures, I see a great resemblance with what Martin just showed. So it's good to see that many practices are used in many more countries. To involve stakeholders, seed expert group is really the most important measure implemented. And to increase the availability and use of suitable varieties for organic farmers, variety trials and organic breeding research are important measures. For limited derogation, the national annex system or the non-derogation list is the main measure implemented. And then there are some examples of private agreements to stimulate the production and use of organic seed. It was also mentioned yesterday, one of the examples is from Switzerland, where they have established a fund for certain crops to promote organic breeding. And to fill this fund, farmers that buy conventional propagating material have to pay the organic price, and this price difference is put in this fund. And there are also some examples, for instance, in Denmark, but also in my country, where farmers and the seed supplier agree to use a certain percentage of organic seed. Looking at the seed expert groups, you can see here that all the countries having a seed expert group are having more than one group they have groups for the different crops. And this is for a reason, because often it's not only different type of farmers, but also different type of seed producers or traders. And what you can also see in this picture is, on this slide, is that some of the crops or the groups are dealing with vegetative propagating material. Here you see an overview of the national annexes in the different countries. I think it's already quite impressive. What you can see here, that it's not only crops on the national annex, but also quite often subcrops, because sometimes there's enough organic seed for a certain subcrop, but not for the whole crop, and then it helps to divide the crop into subcrops. So it's more step-by-step approach. It's also important to mention that in Switzerland, the national annex is not public regulation, but it's organized by BioSwiss, and that's a private organic farming organization. But 95% of the organic farmers in Switzerland are member of BioSwiss. Now I come to some smart practices. To start with France. France is, of course, a very large country, and they work with the national annex for several years now. And when they started to work with this national annex, they also introduced a fourth category called the alert screen. And you can see it on the slide, it's marked yellow. And on this alert screen, they put the crops or subcrops that are candidates for the national annex. And the idea behind this is that both the farmers and the seed producers can start working on, prepare themselves for this off-derogation list. So farmers can try out new varieties, and seed producers can start producing more organic seed of the crops that are on this list. Another example from France is a progressive timetable. And here you see the example of carrots. Because carrots is a biannual crop, which means that seed production takes 2 seasons or a year and a half at least. And it's quite difficult to produce organic carrot seed. So it was too big a step to say, okay, we just put carrots on the national annex. So they put it on the alert screen, and at the same time, this timetable was developed to step by step to make sure that farmers can adjust to the new situation. So in this year, in 2020, they have to use 50% of, if you grow organic carrots in France, you have to use at least 50% organic seed. And each year, this percentage will be raised. I think this is also a good example how it could work if you want to make small steps ahead. And come to Denmark, smart practices there. In Denmark, they have, in the seed expert groups, there have crop experts that know the different varieties and how they perform in organic farming. And they evaluate the varieties on the market and their suitability according to specific criteria, depending on the crop. And if a farmer asks for a derogation while at the same time equivalent and suitable varieties are available in organic, the derogation is not granted, unless the farmer has some specific needs at his farm, for instance, a specific disease. And they have another interesting rule, crops that are not harvested, so-called catch crops or cover crops, must always be from organic seed or grown with organic seed. Then I want to share with you some smart example of BEO. BEO works according to the concept breeding for organic. As some of you might know, BEO is a conventional seed company also producing organic seed. And they try to combine the best of both programs. So they start with conventional breeding, but all the breeders keep in mind the interest and the traits that are interesting for organic farmers. And once they think they have some new varieties that are interesting for organic, they start testing them on their organic fields. Another smart practice from BEO is that they introduce part of their assortment only as organic. So for some main varieties that are used a lot within organic farming, they don't produce so-called untreated seed, they only produce organic seed. Another smart practice is that they really look carefully for which crops they produce organic seed, because of course the higher price of organic seed is an issue for farmers, but for many crops farmers use seedlings or transplants, and there the cost effect is much less. And finally, they use the derogation reports to see what are the main varieties that are interesting for organic farmers. Like I said at the beginning, we also had a workshop organized in September on vegetative propagating material, and there the situation is a bit different. In the new regulation, vegetative propagating material should also be included in the database, and until now this is only the case for seed potatoes, but then it will be for all vegetative crops. And what is different there is that unlike seed, you cannot store the material. You cannot put your seed potatoes in the fridge and keep them for another year. You have to sell them and use them in the same season. And therefore, introducing a pre-ordering rule or pre-ordering deadline is very helpful. And this means in practice that derogation can only be requested if the farmer ordered the organic material in time. And again, depending on the country, for potatoes, this is somewhere early spring. And for fruit trees, it takes a bit longer to make a fruit tree, so it should be at least a year or a year and a half in advance. During this workshop, we also looked at some other vegetative propagated crops, the soft fruits like raspberries and strawberries. And there, One of the obstacles is that the propagation is usually done in vitro. You see that on the picture on the right. And this is, of course, not organic. But at the same time, in practice, we see that also the planting material is still used, is still conventional. So we could start with stimulating the use of organic planting material. And that's what you see in the middle, picture in the middle. For raspberries, the long canes, but also for strawberries, the waiting bed plants, they can be produced organically. So that would be a first step. For the grapevines, we had a presentation during this workshop from Germany, from some German breeders. And they explained to us that it's very difficult to grow organic grapevines of the main varieties that are now used, the main conventional varieties that are now used for wine production. Because those varieties are very susceptible to certain diseases. Therefore, they said we need more robust varieties, and they focus now on organic breeding instead of organic propagation. Now we come to the recommendations for strategies to reach 100% organic plant reproductive material. And with plant reproductive material, I mean both seeds and both vegetative propagating material. Well, it's no surprise that also in Northwestern Europe, they think national expert groups are very important to involve the stakeholders and to make progress bottom up. Also, not surprisingly, improve and manage well the national seed database. Also in Northwestern Europe, there's still a lot that can be improved there. Another suggestion was to increase production and marketing of organic plant reproductive material through supply chain initiatives. So involve other stakeholders in the supply chain. Why only involve breeders and farmers? We should also involve traders and maybe even retailers. Then there is a need to clarify the rules for vegetative propagated material in the new organic regulation, because this is not clear at the moment. And like I said before, introducing a pre-ordering deadline for vegetative material can really help to increase the use of this material. And then support the capacity building for breeders and farmers. But the main recommendation coming from this group and also from the panel discussion that we had at the end of this workshop was to increase cooperation between countries, especially the countries that already work with the national annex. They want to cooperate, to learn from each other, to harmonize the implementation, and to create a level playing field. And therefore, they recommend to organize structural knowledge exchange between different countries, maybe even at the European level, on what crops are on category 1, to exchange information on the results of variety trials and also on technical preferences on specific varieties. They also want to have more workshops like we had before on specific topics. For instance, the seed mixtures, the labeling of the seed mixtures. This is something that many countries now are struggling with, and it could help if we have one workshop only dedicated to that. And then there was a suggestion from one of the competent authorities that we could learn from the conventional seed sector on how to share information on seed and varieties between countries. Then at the end of the workshop, we organized a poll, and this was the measure that was most popular there. We should develop a roadmap towards 100% organic seed. What do I mean with a roadmap? Well, a roadmap is more timeline or a plan to come to 100%. And of course, this timeline can be different for each crop. This is just an example. For potatoes, maybe it's a straight line and we could reach 100% organic seed potatoes before year 2036. Personally, I think potatoes would be a good candidate for that, because in many countries already organic seed potatoes are produced. Many companies are involved in organic breeding of varieties suitable for organic, and farmers can help in the propagation of the seed potatoes. For other crops, for instance carrots, we see now that there is still quite difficult to produce organic seed. But once these technical problems are solved, maybe there will be a raise in the production and use of organic carrot seed as well. And for other crops, again, this is just an example to give you an idea. For some cereals, maybe it's more a stepwise approach, because there is many different varieties are used in many countries, so it will take a lot of effort to increase the supply of organic seeds. So this was the main recommendation, to develop a clear roadmap towards organic seed. And I hope that later today, also within a panel discussion, we can discuss this a bit more. To develop such a roadmap, it was said that analyze bottlenecks and describe actions that are needed is essential. Then you make a long-term timetable, a plan for each crop. When needed, you could divide the crop into subcrops. All relevant stakeholders should be involved. And this can be done on the national level, but also in the international level between countries. And another idea was to give expert groups an important role in this, to integrate the aims of the different crops in national organic action plans. I'll come to the end of my presentation. I thank you for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Michael, for these very clear recommendations. And thank you for mentioning at the end organic action plans, because indeed, a clear roadmap to reach 100% organic seeds should ideally be part of a national action plan on organic farming. And as you know, we will soon have a new European action plan on organic farming. It's expected by the beginning of year 2021, and we're all looking forward to it. So once again, I think that the progress achieved throughout the LIVESEED project has been quite impressive already. And dear participants, I would like to remind you that now it's you have the opportunity to ask questions to our speakers. So please do send your questions through the chat, and my colleague Agnes will transmit them to me as well. We have almost 25 minutes for the discussion if we want to. Maybe as I'm waiting for your questions, dear participants, Martin, you said that already there were new countries where seed expert groups were set up throughout the duration of the LIVESEED project. Could you tell us a bit more about which countries have established such expert groups?
Yes, so that's been really something that I've observed from all of the feedback, that there's a lot of things that are, have been initiated with regards to the seed expert groups. One example is Italy, and I would really like to remind you that in the Smart Practices session, so the session afterwards, we will have a presentation on how Italy approaches setting up such an expert group and how they want to involve all the stakeholders in this process. So this is a very interesting example, because there's really a major movement now happening in Italy to get this expert group working. Also, in Greece is, I think, a very nice example. Also in Hungary, in Spain also. I would also like to remind you that in the Smart Practices session, we will have our national partner from Spain also explaining a bit how they approach it, and they have a quite interesting approach in which they link several databases to feed kind of the national database. So I would like to highlight that. And then also in Estonia, it's still work in progress, but there's something happening, and in Lithuania as well. So as I said, in Poland also, they're establishing this expert group. So I think actually in most of the countries where there's been a national visit, now those expert groups are being set up.
That's great. Thank you, Martin. I think that's a very important result, which is worth celebrating. There's more work to be done, obviously, but I think the LIVESEED project has created a clear dynamics in this respect. So that's very good news. And I actually have a follow-up question related to this to Micah now, because the SEED expert group is why it is important to have a SEED expert group. In many countries, it's linked to the national annex and to the no derogation list. And many countries still do not have such a national annex with no derogation. In your opinion, Micah, would you have advice on how such a national annex should be established at the national level, and who should be involved?
Yes. Well, I think it's important, if you want to introduce such a system, that first of all, you have an expert group to discuss for which crops you think in your country there could be enough organic seed available, and to discuss what the main varieties are for the farmers that are needed for this crop in order to put it on the non-derogation list. And as a second step, you need clear criteria to determine when a certain crop can go to this list. In my country, for instance, we look at the derogation list every year to see if for a certain crop there are many derogations, then obviously the amount of seed available is not enough. So then together with the farmers, we try to find out what are actually the main varieties. And then hopefully the seed producers that own those varieties are willing to produce organic seed. This is not always the case. So in that case, it's hard to put the crop on the national annex. And if this is the case, then the seed producers can say, okay, we can produce this and this variety. And then the farmers say, okay, if this is the assortment, then we can put it on category 1. And then you can put it on there, but the expert group in most countries is not having the mandate to really decide on that. They can advise the competent authorities. And then the competent authorities, they have to agree to put a crop on such a list. So regarding your question, who should be involved? Well, the farmers. And it's important that the farmers are representing other farmers, because so if there are from a farmers organization, for instance, that helps. Then you need the seed producers there. You need some crop experts from research institute. The certifier or the database manager would be helpful. And then the government should be involved for the final decision. I think that is most important. And if you want to start with something like this, just start with some crops that your country is really good at, and that you have many companies involved in. Start with some basic crops for your country. That would be my advice.
Okay, thank you, Maaike. And as you mentioned, it's clear that first of all, you need to have data and information from the stakeholders about which crops are the key one and are really missing on the one hand, and which could be maybe a bit easier to produce at national level on the other end. And like Martin said, I think we will hear in details about some of the countries which are in the process of establishing expert groups and no derogation list as well. I have a question from the audience for you, Maaike, as well. So I'm going to read it. Do you think it is realistic to achieve the goal of 100% organic seeds without clear legal restrictions?
I don't know what you mean with legal restrictions here.
It's a question. It's a question from the participants. So it's open to your interpretations.
Yes.
Well, I guess it refers to a large extent to a derogation and to a phasing out of derogation, at some point to the obligation of using organic seeds, whether it's for specific crops or whether, as you know, we have an end goal with a new organic regulation, 2036. Maybe this time frame is too long. I don't know. What do you think of the importance of having legal restrictions in this way forward?
And with legal restrictions, you mean to grant derogations, maybe, or? I
understand the question as having a clear roadmap about ending derogations.
Yes. Well, of course, derogations can only be ended when there is enough availability of organic seed. And there will only be enough availability of organic seed if there is a clear demand from the farmers. So that's why we can only move forward step by step, I think. And again, I would like to stress that it's important to start with the main crops. And I cannot answer the question if we will reach actually 100% organic seed for all small crops, including the crops and the herbs that are in seed mixtures. But to me, that is not the most interesting question right now, because we're far from this 100%. So I would also be happy if we reach 90%. The most important thing is that we move forward, and therefore you have to, you need commitment from both sides. Because also for the seed producers, producing organic seed is a great challenge. It's not something you can just do aside. They have to convert their fields to organic, and they have to learn how to produce those seeds. And for some varieties, it's really difficult. So if they invest a lot, they need to have some market certainty. And this has to come from the farmers. So if the farmers say, okay, we want this variety in organic, and those varieties are multiplied, then they should buy it. And then you need some kind of legal restrictions or regulation to make sure that the derogations are limited. And so far, this national annex system seems to be, I think, the best option for that.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for reminding that, the work of seed companies and breeders is a challenging one. It's usually, a challenging but rewarding process to convert to organic farming for a farmer. But there's also a lot of, knowledge building and for breeders as well. And it's great to see that so many seed companies, are looking now to further invest resources in the production of organic seeds. But indeed, they need previsibility. And you mentioned, as one of the key recommendations, we need to have clear roadmaps on how to reach 100% organic seeds, maybe for each crop as well. And in this respect, you mentioned a very interesting practice from France, which is this alert string. because it gives visibility to stakeholders, for a given crop, in how many years there will be no derogation possible anymore. Do you think that it is a practice that could be useful to establish in other countries which already have a national annex, for example, so as to improve previsibility?
Yes, I think it's very helpful. In fact, we're trying it out also in my country now. Well, we don't have this nice alert screen on our database, but we do, in the expert groups, we do make a long-term commitment. So for some crops, we say, okay, we want these varieties, and it will take 4 years to produce them, and then we put it on the national annex. So we decide on the intention to put it on the national annex, and of course you have to evaluate this when the time is there. But yeah, I think we do that, and also in other countries, also in Germany, they look forward to see, okay, what can we produce in the coming years, and what is the perspective?
Okay, thank you very much. Just I'm turning to Martin now because you mentioned that you participated yourself to some of the national workshops as well. Maybe could you tell us about your feeling of a prospects in some of the countries for further collaboration, because the stakeholders at the national level have made commitment to all take steps to improve the situation, especially in countries where there is not yet an expert group, or where the database is not really interactive yet, or not fully filled up with all the necessary information. I don't know, maybe you can tell us briefly about your subjective experience with your participation in some national workshops, about the prospects for further cooperation in some countries, or about some of the bottlenecks and difficulties, maybe. Martin?
Yeah, so I mean, I've only attended 2 of them, so maybe in the end, Maike, who attended more, can also add on this. I think what was very interesting to see is that, first of all, there was kind of this feeling in the air that those meetings don't happen often enough. So participants were really eager to exchange and to discuss and to think about how can we progress step by step. So that was the first thing that I experienced, that this workshop really made a difference, because people are getting together that cannot or usually do not get in touch with each other, or not enough. So the question is now, I think, how can you kind of institutionalize this? Because I mean, LIVESEED will be ending next year, and the question is, how do these stakeholders stay connected? And one thing is there, those like stakeholder networks that I mentioned, that have been set up, that are informal. But then also, I think those expert groups at national level can make a huge difference, because this would be a regular forum where stakeholders get together, and it's then not only about what is the actual competence of the expert groups that they exchange on, but because they are meeting and they have these connections, they will also be exchanging about other things as well. So yeah, I think those expert groups are a big part of it.
Okay, I think we made the message clear about the importance of national expert groups, and I'm sure more will be set up in the coming months and years as well. So we have more questions from the audience. A question for Maike about farm-saved seeds. What do you think about the farm-saved seeds produced on farm under organic condition? This would be a legal and a possibility, wouldn't it? That's the question.
Well, yeah, it's actually mentioned explicitly in the new organic regulation that the use of farm-saved seed under organic conditions is allowed and should be recognized as organic seed. And of course, the the rules for producing organic seed on your farm are also linked to the seed marketing rules. You cannot just produce organic seed or reproduce from protected varieties. So you have to keep that in mind. But once you keep this in mind, of course, it's a great contribution. And I think we need farm-safe seed and farmers to produce seed if we want to reach this 100% organic seed. In some countries, there are hardly any seed companies active, and farmers are still, in fact, the main producers of seed. And therefore, it's important that in those countries, there's also investment, like Martin mentioned before, in training for farmers, so that the quality of the seed is improved. And once those farmers are certified, they can also, for seed production, they can also sell their seed. So, I think it's necessary.
Yes, thank you. And it's actually a point I wanted to ask you about, because I think you both mentioned capacity building of farmers and breeders as an important action as well. Does one of you, either you, Micah, or Martin, wants to say a bit more about this? Which type of actions will be important, can make a difference, or have you seen in some countries some interesting practices already in terms of capacity building? Martin, maybe? It's a difficult question. Yeah.
I mean, the key point is, I think, participatory breeding here, which basically means that the farmers are involved in the breeding process from a really early stage, and the other thing is then also training farmers to produce seed that are, like Micah mentioned, in a high quality. So we've seen that there are breeding institutes and research institutes working together with farmers more and more. And I think there was a clear consensus among all of the participants in the national workshops that this is a very crucial, way we should, this is the way where we should be going. And then also, I think there's still in some countries really a need for those trainings, capacity building trainees for farmers to produce organic seed.
Yes, thank you. And in general, I think capacity building is part of the actions in general where the organic movement expects from the new organic action plan at the European level as well, because there are indeed many countries where where the organic movement is not so well established or organized, and where it's very important to have capacity building in general. But I would like to say thank you for mentioning participatory breeding program, bringing together farmers and researchers. And I must say that the European Commission, through their research program, have been pioneering such participatory research approaches already for a couple of decades almost. And that's one of a good point about EU research programs in this respect. And they have clearly an important role to play. I have a technical question about seed potatoes from our participants as well, and it's for Maker. So Maker, you said that seed potatoes are possible to multiply under organic conditions, and that's true. But what about the seed that is used to produce seed potatoes? The participant is working in that business, and it's apparently impossible to buy and very hard to produce high-class organic seeds for potatoes. And in the participant's view, it will never be possible to have an independent organic seed potato productions. What do you think about this?
Before I answer this question, I would very briefly add to what Martin just said on this, if you allow me, on the capacity building. because I think it's also important that farmers are, in addition to what Martin said, educated on good farming practices for organic, and also about which varieties are actually most suitable for organic production. Because what we see very often is that farmers that convert to organic just keep on using the same varieties as they did when they were a conventional farmer, just because they don't know other varieties existing that might be more suitable. And therefore, in the independent variety trials, where the farmers can see an overview of all the varieties of a certain crop, I think they are very important also to stimulate them to use most suitable and optimal varieties for organic farming.
Okay, what do you mean by independent variety trials?
Well, of course, seed companies organize also field trials with their own varieties, but it's often at research stations that you can, as a farmer, have an overview of the varieties from the different companies. And that's what I mean with independent. It can be a demonstration field or actually field trial that is not showing only the varieties from one company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I guess it touches upon as well the key role of farm advisory services too, and we hope that this is going to be that there will be actions as well in the EU organic action plan to improve funding and access to independent farm advisory as well.
Specialized in organic.
Exactly, specialized in organic and in agroecological approaches as well.
Yes.
This is part of our challenges and ways forward as well. Back to potatoes now, Micah. The question about the difficulty to get high-class organic seeds for potatoes.
The seed potatoes are the propagating material, so they should be organic in organic farming. But the seed for the seed potatoes can be conventional. And I can only speak from my own experience here, but in the Netherlands, we have many seed breeding and trading companies for potatoes, and they all cooperate with farmers. So they give the original material to the farmers, and the farmers produce then the seed potatoes. And those seed potatoes are given back then to the companies, and they sell it to the farmers to produce potatoes. That's, I think, in more countries, the common practice, that there's already a collaboration between the farmers and the seed breeding or the potato breeding companies.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if this answers the question, but otherwise this person can always send me an email and I can explain a bit more on this.
Thank you. What is fascinating is that each crop and each species raises its own challenges as well, which is part of a fun when you're discovering this field, I find. Maybe we can go to one topic as well that you mentioned, Martin, is how databases have been improved in the last years throughout the LIVESEED project as well. Do you have one or two concrete examples in mind of such improvement of a databases, which are also one of the crucial tools to gradually phase out derogations and to reach 100% organic seeds?
Yes, I can maybe explain like some general improvements that I've seen. I mean, first of all, it is clear that it should be free. It's also in the new organic regulation. So we've seen one or two examples where it has been made freely accessible, and this is the starting point.
Sorry, the seed companies or the farmers or both?
Because the seed database should be, of course, free to use for producers to put their offers in the seed database. And then it's also important that and I think we've seen also some improvement there, that seed producers have access to the database so that they themselves can update the offers. And it's very crucial because there has been some constructs, and there's still some constructs where seed producers have to get in touch with the national authorities, make a request so that they can put it on the database. So, and this is a lot of bureaucracy that's actually not needed if the seed producers can directly put their offers on there. And we've seen some improvements there, but there is still a lot to be done, I think, when we come really to how easy is it to use, and how practical is this database managed.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I have more questions from the floor coming. One of the participants wants to come back to the possibility of using farm-safe seeds, and he or she's asking, don't you see a risk in training farmers for seed multiplication to have higher quality farm-safe seeds, because it could decrease the demand for certified seed and thus the royalty income for breeders who are working to make organic more productive? Who wants to answer this question? Mike, please.
No, I don't see this risk. First of all, for many crops, it's really too complicated. Many vegetable crops, at least, it's too complicated for farmers to produce the seed themselves, and they can never compete with the quality of the seed or are very hard to compete. You cannot do it aside. You really need to dedicate as a farmer then to seed production. What I was referring to is more that in some countries where there is the necessity to use farm-safe seed because there's a lack of seed companies, and the farmers have to choose between farm-safe seed or seed that is imported and not really suitable for their national conditions. And in that case, the training can help them to produce better farm-safe seed, and that the quality of the seed they produce for themselves is improved. But in my experience, once there are seed companies that offer a good quality seed, then farmers producing that same quality of seed, they can only do that if they really dedicate to that and not apart from all their crop production. It's just too much work then. So I think that the need for certified seed from seed companies will not be hindered by this.
Okay, thank you for a clear answer about that. I have another question from our participants, and it's starting with a comment. Clarifying the rules in the new organic regulation is definitely necessary. Do you have any comments on which specific problems or open questions are still there in relation to the new organic regulation and the secondary legislation, I guess? Martin, do you want to try and answer that? What are still the open questions that the new organic regulation should solve or address? Or it could be Martin or Micah.
I mean, the organic regulation is really in its last phase now. Public consultations are taking place. For example, at the moment, there's one on organic heterogeneous materials. So also this is for you stakeholders if you want to make a contribution there. Now would be the opportunity. There are still some points to be clarified with regards to organic heterogeneous material of what makes this material actually organic. So there we will need some clarification. And also with regards to seed mixtures, I think seed mixtures is a major point where we have different systems in different countries. And the question is, how can we get together the offers that are there on seed mixtures without interfering to the national context, like without interfering to what's actually working at the national context. So this is a huge challenge, and this will probably not be solved with this organic regulation. But at least we will see a bit more clarity when it comes to labeling the seed mixtures.
Thank you, Martin. Do you want to add on that, Micah?
Yeah, very briefly. It was also mentioned yesterday during the discussion with the people from the Commission that there's still some clarification needed on the status of the seed from farms in conversion compared to so in conversion seed compared to organic seed. And like I said in my presentation, we need some clarification on the rules for vegetative material, because if you look at the regulation, only the propagating material can be conventional. But if you look at the practice of many crops, then also the planting material is still conventional. And well, you can say, well, that's not allowed, but if there's no organic planting material, so that would be comparable to seedlings if it comes to seed crops, there's a lot of work to do there. So we have to be realistic and to see how we close this gap. But this was really something that came out of this workshop on vegetative material.
Okay, thank you, Micah. And indeed, we had a very detailed presentation yesterday from Thomas Weber from DG Santé and from Patricia Pitton from DG Agriculture about all the work which is still ongoing to finalize the secondary legislation related to organic seed as well. But I'm now being alerted that we are being over time, and it's my fault. I'm very sorry about that. I had plenty of more questions for you, but we'll have a chance to further discuss this in the panel this afternoon as well. We now have a 10 minutes break, so we'll be back at 11:30. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, Micah. And Micah, you'll be moderating the next sessions about smart practices as well. So thank you, and see you again in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Eric.